Hi everyone, Rival here and welcome back to the channel. Now I'm going to ask a simple question. What's the best way to play the Pokemon TCG card game? I think most would definitely argue to be in person. The tense moment of drawing the heart of cards, as you lose a game by a coin flip or by an incredible play, is definitely how it should be. But the reality is we can't always play the card game in person. It's fun for sure, but time can be an issue in playing competitive tournaments, and money can certainly be an issue when it comes to the collecting side of it. After all, we just got the most recent Surging Spark set, and then you take one look at the cost of that Pikachu card, which yes, every single day seems to be going up and up. It can be pretty disheartening. Wait until we get Prismatic Evolutions next year and there's going to be another $1,000 Umbreon card. So sometimes you have to look for an alternative in order to engage with the fan base. And the alternative to playing the Pokemon TCG in person is to play the video games. And despite Pokemon's illustrious history of over 100 games made, they've only ever made 5 Pokemon games released based on the TCG alone. In that time, Mystery Dungeon has had 7. Well, technically more than 7 sets, because obviously they released them in pairs similar to the actual main series. But even so, Mystery Dungeon started much later, but has had more games available. I honestly find it a bit weird considering how successful the Pokemon trading card game is. And even when it goes through lulls, it seems to pick itself back up again. Quite frankly, the best way to describe it is that it's a money printing machine for Nintendo. And also scalpers, considering they seem to make a decision to just casually take as much as possible just to resell on. We've all seen those clips of people fighting. This is a very profitable business for people. Well, today I'm going to play the 5 Pokemon TCG card games available, so you don't have to. We'll have a look at both the history and the gameplay, and see what the best Pokemon TCG video game is. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe as it really helps out the channel, and feel free to comment down below what your favourite Pokemon TCG video game is, or was. Now to start off, we have to go all the way back to the Game Boy Color to talk about the first Pokemon TCG video game ever made, quite rightly titled Pokemon the Trading Card Game video game. By the time the Pokemon Trading Card game was starting to take off in Japan, and so it made sense to release a game for it. Released in December 1998 and then later in North America on April 10th, 2000, developed by Hudson Soft and published by Nintendo, the game sought to bring the fun of the Pokemon card battles to a digital format, which was a very novel approach at the time. Naturally, the Pokemon franchise was already immensely popular due to its video games, the training card, and the animated series, so the TCG video game was positioned to reach fans who were either new to the trading card game, or those who were unable to access the physical cards regularly. The game included 226 cards from the base, jungle, and fossil sets, marking it as the first digital capture of the early Pokemon TCG era. Funnily enough, I don't think this game took off as much as they hoped. It was actually a game I didn't play until later on in my life, which is weird considering I was a big fan of the TCG when I was younger, because like everybody, I definitely had a load of cards that were definitely expensive, that I no longer own and I'm definitely regretting. In terms of the gameplay, Pokemon TCG on the Game Boy Color mirrors the basic of the physical trading card game, but is set in a unique single-player RPG format. Players will assume the role of a young character named Mark, or whatever you wanted to customize yours to. I think the name of my character is definitely the best. As you venture into a world where card battles decide everything. So basically we've gone from the Pokemon world to the Yu-Gi-Oh world. The goal is to collect 8 Master Medals from various club leaders and eventually challenge the Grand Masters, much like the structure of Pokemon Gym Leaders in the main series. As a player, you'll battle other NPCs and win booster packs containing random cards, which will naturally help you build stronger decks. Winning battles is key to progressing, as players need to build a powerful deck to defeat stronger opponents. I mean, early on I was struggling with some of these battles. Maybe that's a skill issue though. While the physical TCG players will use 60 card decks in an attempt to get their prize cards down to 0, though it's important to mention throughout this game you can get 4, whereas the traditional gameplay is 6. Again, this is very early on in the TCG. It incorporated fewer expansions because we only had a few sets out at the time. It's important to note a lot of the supporter cards are very basic at the time. Nowadays there's so many available, but back then we were definitely limited. Again, this is purely down to how many cards existed in the TCG when it came out. I'd say one of the standout qualities of the TCG video game is how it introduced strategic card battles to players who might not have had the opportunity to buy or collect physical cards. It simulates the thrill of booster packs, which is especially important for a lot of people who wanted to collect cards. I think one of the most important things that the game does is that it succeeds in creating a more accessible entry point into the TCG universe, without the actual needing actual cards, making it a great alternative for those interested in learning the basics of Pokemon card battles. Of course, it's important to note that the game has a lot of limitations. The single player structure, while entertaining, lacks a competitive or cooperative social aspect to it, something that makes the physical TCG more appealing to many fans. It is naturally limited to the amount of cards available, and therefore limits your deck building, especially compared to the modern TCG now with hundreds and hundreds of cards available, and so many complex mechanics that have evolved over time. For example, there's no mechanics such as EX or V-Star, all of which add layers of complex gameplay. Because it misses a lot of mechanics, and doesn't have as many strategies, the game can definitely feel a lot slower. But I wouldn't necessarily say all these problems are its own fault. It came at a time when there wasn't as many sets available. So naturally, because the series has progressed a lot over time, its limitations are caused by what the game eventually becomes. Something that's fun about it as well is that it's now available on the Nintendo Switch, with some newfound accessibility and some nostalgic charm. I think it's pretty cool, some of the games that are now available on the Nintendo Switch Online. There's so many now, of course, there's no main series games, but having it on the Switch provides a user-friendly interface and allows people to see what the Pokemon TCG used to be. Sure, it's certainly not got the complexity of modern trading card games, but it certainly serves as a valuable bridge between the early days of Pokemon and today's more intricate card battles. And I'd say it holds up surprisingly well, once you get past these limitations caused by how the game has evolved. I think the important thing from the TCG video games perspective is that it was the first entry into the TCG video games, so it definitely taught a lot of people how to play the format. When you're a kid, you tend to mess about with a lot of cards, but this was a proper structure and helped people understand how to actually play the Pokemon TCG. It's not the most optimum way to play the game anymore because it's so outdated, but even so, it's great fun. I unfortunately originally missed the boat when it came out. I was too busy opening the actual packs, which is a shame really. Maybe I could be a better player if I started very young. I was too busy collecting them, not actually playing them. Now, unfortunately, the Pokemon TCG video games have an entry into that never made it into the West genre. Pokemon the Trading Card Game 2, The Invasion of Team GR, is the 2001 sequel to the Pokemon Trading Card game for the Game Boy Color, and it remains a lesser known gem for fans, as the sequel was only released in Japan. For full transparency, I'm playing a fan translation, because otherwise I'd never play this either. It may seem like a strange decision not to release a Pokemon game into the West, but if I was a betting man, I would hypothesize it definitely had something to do with the Game Boy Color's life cycle ending, as we were so close to the Game Boy Advance. And so they probably thought, let's miss this out as we're going to get a new console soon. It's important to remember there was always a time delay with getting games in the West. And because of this, Western players missed out on this release as Nintendo probably focused on transitioning to the next generation handheld. And companies were more reluctant to localize titles if they anticipated limited sales on an older platform. At the time, game releases were much less structured than they are today, with only a sporadic amount of global launches, which is why games like Pokemon TCG 2 often got confined to their regional markets. This lack of a structured global release plan definitely affected not just Pokemon, but many franchises, leaving Western audiences unaware of entire games or seasons until years later. For example, I'm a big fan of Dragon Ball Z and Yu-Gi-Oh!, and both have had several titles or anime seasons that weren't accessible outside of Japan. One of the most notable is definitely Plan to Eradicate the Saiyans, and the entire Yu-Gi-Oh! GX Season 4. Some of these things were only discovered by fans outside of Japan once the internet made fan translations and information sharing easier. Off topic, it's also important to note that sometimes there was other things that affected those decisions, not just a scattered global release. Now, Pokemon TCG 2 Invasion of Team GR, there were multiple additions and enhancements that build on the original game's mechanics. We now had a new evil team in Team Great Rocket, a new organization that serves as the game's primary antagonists. Following the previous RPG format, Team GR have now taken over various card clubs in the game, and the player must travel to their island to reclaim each club by defeating Team GR members in card battles. There's now a larger quest-like system progression, involving capturing the clubs back from Team GR's influence. Additionally, the card pool has now expanded significantly, with the most important addition being the Team Rocket set, a set that is definitely still popular to this day. This was the original introduction of the Dark Pokemon cards, reflecting the villainous nature of Team GR, and the set that is based on from the original TCG is an expensive one. I actually think Dark start Pokemon is one of the coolest introductions in Pokemon. It's a shame they haven't done too much on that. In this game, you can also trade with NPCs in order to acquire rare cards and complete your collection, which definitely adds a lot more layers to this game. There's also an improved AI for opponents, making battles more challenging and varied. Ultimately, it's just an expanded version of the original Pokemon trading card video game. It follows the same RPG format, but unfortunately due to its timing in terms of release, made it a lost game for many years in the West, as many fans had few ways to even hear about it. Today, with access to social media and just a general search on Google, we would know a lot of information about this, and at some point you would expect it to get actually released. For this one though, you're going to have to stick to the fan translations in order to experience the invasion of Team GR. Now, weirdly enough, from these two games we would have to wait a significant period of time to get another TCG video game, despite how popular the card game was. Very strange to have such a big gap between the games despite how well it was selling, but it's definitely a decision that was definitely odd. And unfortunately, this is where it gets a bit difficult. Pokemon the Trading Card Game Online was released on March 24th, 2011, and served as the official digital adaptation of the Pokemon Trading Card Game. This allowed people to play an online version and experience the TCG virtually, offering a way to build decks, compete in battles, and access daily content without the need to buy physical cards. Though if you did buy the physical cards, you could then get that particular pack in the game. TCG Online continued to grow for over a decade with regular updates and new expansions aligned with the physical card releases. However, after more than a decade of service, the game was officially shut down on June 5th, 2023 and replaced with its successor, the Trading Card Game Live, which aimed to modernize and streamline the TCG's digital platform while also bringing improvements to graphics and gameplay. And the issue with this shutting down means I don't actually have any footage whatsoever of this game other than the fact I still have the app installed on my computer. But naturally it does not work, so yeah, I actually have nothing to show while discussing this game. I should have recorded some while it was preparing to shut down because I was doing Pokemon YouTube when it was, but unfortunately rather I didn't think that far ahead. So instead just enjoy the still image for a few minutes, and I might put some of my favourite cards on screen at some points just to add a bit of variety. Anyways, back to TCG Online. It was Pokemon's attempt at doing an online game that was free to play and accessible to fans, so they didn't need to go to any competitive tournaments in person and could instead play the TCG from the comfort of their own home against other players while testing their decks along the way. One of the definite highlights of TCG Online was its daily content and reward system, which kept players engaged through daily bonuses, quests and time challenges. You could be rewarded with in-game currency or booster packs and various customization options by logging in and completing specific tasks. It also allowed you to redeem codes from the physical card game to unlock digital version of those cards, creating a seamless link between the physical collecting and the online play. This was a key aspect of its appeal as it bridged the physical and digital realms in a way that few other TCG platforms did at the time. As it was a representation of the physical TCG game, it naturally mirrored those rules and mechanics, with you constructing a 60 card deck. It had a great deck building system, and for newcomers the game included tutorials and an AI opponent to practice against, making it easy accessible to players who are unfamiliar with the TCG. The game was generally well received by fans, particularly as it offered a way to play the TCG game without the financial or logistical barriers, because collecting the physical cards can be a bit of a pain sometimes. Many players definitely appreciated the frequent updates and new content aligned with the latest TCG expansions, allowing the online game to stay current with the physical game, and therefore allowed you to evolve your strategies with the current meta. Of course, it isn't without its flaws. Some found the graphics and user interface outdated, especially with some other TCG games that exist such as Magic the Gathering, and the game definitely had some occasional issues with trading restrictions and matchmaking. Still, it maintained a very loyal fanbase until the end, and has definitely played an important role in TCG's digital history, allowing players worldwide to enjoy the game from their devices, build collections and battle friends or other fans. While it shut down marked the end of an era, it was replaced by a new version, a game that promised change and improvement, something that it did not provide. Now, if you previously visited my channel before, firstly thanks for coming back, but if you've been here before, you know I have an interesting relationship with Pokemon TCG Live. This is partly down to the fact that the game replaced something that I don't think it was better than, and partly down to my frustration over what it could actually be. But the reality is the game has not lived up to the expectations that I had. It was officially launched on June 8th, 2023 as the successor to TCG Online, bringing a more modernized and streamlined experience to the TCG. It was initially released in beta format in November 2021 to allow players to test out its new features and interface while providing feedback before its full release. It aimed to replace the TCG Online by updating visuals, gameplay and reward systems to bring the game more in line with modern digital TCG platforms, enhancing accessibility across devices by being available on both PC and mobile, though not the Switch, which I still find very silly. However, despite its ambitious goals, TCG Live faced mixed reviews from fans, especially when compared to the community's long-standing familiarity and loyalty towards TCG Online. The reception to TCG Live was definitely divided, as many players felt it lacked some of the polish, as well as the depth that TCG Online had. This was despite it promising a more user-friendly experience. On one hand, Live definitely improved on a more accessible interface, especially for new players. It streamlined the deck building process with a clearer and cleaner setup. The migration system allowed a lot of players to transfer over most of their cards from TCG Online, ensuring long-time players could keep their collections. Well, most anyways. Some was not included. New tutorials and beginner-friendly features made it easier for newcomers to learn the game's mechanics. However, TCG Live has its downsides that have left a lot of long-time fans disappointed. Many players noted that the game lacks a lot of sufficient daily content to maintain long-term engagement. While TCG Online offered daily rewards, quests, and special events that gave players ongoing goals, TCG Live definitely has a lot fewer options, making it harder to earn in-game currency and new cards daily, which essentially makes the game feel a bit sparse. This scarcity makes it challenging for free-to-play players to collect cards and build competitive decks without investing in microtransactions, which definitely frustrates players more who used to play TCG Online, which had a more generous reward system. Further, some players found the overall user interface and in-game screens to feel stark and empty, lacking the vibrant visuals or animations that other modern TCG games have. This creates a more lifeless feel, especially comparing it to the evolving and community-driven energy that TCG Online sustained. The stripped-back visual design and interface changes also received a bit of a lukewarm response. While the streamlined look was intended to make navigation simpler, some people felt it made the game less engaging and immersive. There's fewer customization options and limited social features, which has left many fans feeling like the game is less of a social community experience than its predecessor. Although the developers have hinted at ongoing updates and improvements, in fact, improvements have already begun after the release of the newest TCG game, likely in response to the initial success of that one. There's a lot of room to develop and something that it needs to do fast, because otherwise it will get left in the dust. Because whilst there was positives to the game, the reality is that it replaced a much loved game that was definitely better in its current format. And so we're on to the most recent release in the franchise, Pokemon TCG Pocket. Now, we've covered this previously when discussing the game, but the team behind TCG Pocket is different from that behind TCG Live. As such, the game is now in the hands of those who actually work on the trading cards, hence the incredible art designs when you pack a Mewtwo or Charizard card. TCG Pocket was released in October 2024 and feels like a direct response to the issues its alternative has had. Pocket is a simplified version to play the TCG in terms of battling, similar to how Duel Links is a modified version to the traditional duels for Yu-Gi-Oh! Like in Master Duel. It takes a unique approach to the digital trading card game, focusing heavy on card collection. This mobile-first game is designed to make the act of collecting cards feel more exciting and significant through dynamic animations and daily rewards. Each time a player opens a pack, they're greeted with a vivid celebrity animation that heightens the excitement of unlocking new cards, adding a layer of engagement that makes each pack feel more special. Daily packs are a core feature, offering players a steady influx of new cards, even more if you get the premium pass, but like me, make sure to cancel in time, because if you got it on release date, you're at the time where you're going to pay otherwise. Daily content is very important in order to keep people engaged. This game is definitely geared towards fans who enjoy building their card libraries and hunting for those rare cards without the need of having to pay any money. Like Live, Pocket is attempting to make a more accessible version for casual players who are new to the TCG. Some of the key mechanics have been streamlined, including energy cards which have been eliminated. Instead, energy is automatically provided each turn. Additionally, matches are shorter and faster paced, with the goal being to knock out 3 of your opponent's Pokemon rather than the traditional 6. EX cards still count for 2. There's also no prize cards, which reduces the game's complexity, making it a more relaxed pick up and play experience compared to the competitive complex counterparts. Despite being simplified, TCG Pocket has shown signs of keeping things interesting with regular engaging updates. The game has already introduced a few events such as the Lapras event or the Wonder Pick events, which gives players several opportunities to earn unique cards or rewards and incentivizes them to play daily. These events hint at a promising content roadmap that could keep players invested in the long term. If TCG Pocket can maintain this steady flow of events, card releases and new features, it has the potential to become a strong staple in the Pokemon TCG lineup, especially for players who are looking for a lighter, more accessible experience. Overall, I think TCG Pocket feels like a step in the right direction for fans who want a more collection-focused casual TCG experience. It feels a niche polish that allows players to enjoy the essence of Pokemon TCG without the complexities of competitive play, and its strong emphasis on enjoying the card collecting without any money involved. Feels like a refreshing layer to the Pokemon TCG right now. While there's certainly room to grow in terms of consistent updates and event frequency, I think TCG Pocket has a solid foundation that could become a go-to game for fans, especially if updates continue regularly. From playing all these games, I do think every single one of them has its own merit depending on what you want to use them for. The original TCG video game is a nice exploration game, and it's a good method to teach you in how to play the core mechanics of the TCG. TCG Rocket game sorts out some issues from the original one and has some good fan translations. TCG Live certainly has its problems and problems that certainly need to be solved fast, but as it currently stands in terms of today, it's definitely the most optimum way to play the standard TCG card game with other people, as you can play this online, though I think it should be accessible on the Switch. TCG Pocket is definitely looking like a great method for collecting cards, especially if you're somebody who does not want to pay an absurd amount of money collecting them, because when you see the price of that Pikachu card from Surging Sparks currently, it will certainly make you question this hobby. So a good alternative is definitely important, though it needs to show some consistent update schedules, because if it doesn't continue on its current trajectory, then it's just a waste of time. The only unfortunate one here is TCG Online, which has been banished to the Shadow Realm, which is a shame because it was generally a well-liked game, though again it definitely needed its fixes as well. Honestly, the thing that I'm most shocked about is there's no more games available. Like I said previously, Mystery Dungeon alone, which started later, has more options available, and when you look at some of the options Yu-Gi-Oh has had in terms of alternate card games, such as Duelist of the Roses or Forbidden Memories, we could honestly do so much more with the Pokemon TCG than we currently are. Honestly, playing them all again has made me feel proper nostalgic for the TCG, so I'm definitely going to have to dive face first into the next set that's coming out, which is probably going to be expensive too. Thanks for watching everyone, make sure to like and subscribe as it really helps out the channel, and comment down below what's your favourite Pokemon TCG video game available. It's been quite fun playing them all again. I remember when I first played TCG Online so many years ago. It was definitely my favourite for a period of time, but I'm really liking TCG Pocket as well. I guess we'll see as time goes on. Anyways, I'll see you next time, guys.